Never been to this channel before, this is Ramen Noodle Budgets, where we try and make things as cheap as we possibly can. Now, I am dressed like Tommy Jarvis sort of right now. I'm still finishing up the part 6 Jason mask tutorial. I'm really late on that. It was supposed to release Monday, and then it was gonna be released today, but I'm super busy and still trying to get this Jason done, which he looks a little, he's very thick right now. In today's video, I'm doing something kind of a surprise to this channel. I don't know if you guys know, but I love Pennywise. It Chapter 2 came out like a month ago. I loved it, and I really wanted to make some decorations for it from the film. So we went out and bought, or my mom went out and bought this really cheap Halloween clown kind of animatronic. It's barely an animatronic, he just moves at the hip. And she brought it to me and she said she wanted me to make it into Pennywise. So I decided I'd try and do it like with what I had in the house. I didn't go out and buy anything crazy. I just want to do a repaint, kind of restyle the hair and everything and figure that out. So I'm going to show you guys how I did that, and I hope you guys enjoy this really weird random tutorial. Alright, so we're starting with this build by using this really cheap, or I think it was pretty modestly cheap, a clown animatronic that I got from Amazon. So although he doesn't really sound like Pennywise, I think we can make him into Pennywise. So I started by removing this really cheap hair that was kind of glued on in its own strip. It was almost like a fur fabric, and some stayed over, but it was fine because we were going to be painting it and covering it with hair later. I started by taping off the eye sockets. Now this was kind of ended up being unnecessary, but if you want to keep the eyes super clean and keep the LEDs safe, I would recommend doing this. The next step, we're actually going to paint his whole face white. So I used this really matte paint, and I lost a lot of the footage here. But basically what you're going to do is just stipple it on Pennywise's face. If you ever look at actual set photos and really close-up high-res photos of his makeup that they did on Bill Skarsgård, it's really splotchy. It looks like it was applied with a sponge, like real face paint, which I think is a really cool effect that I wanted to use. So the matte face paint really helps with that, and it creates this really splotchy look. You just want to cover up all of the makeup or the paint that was already on this thing. I then mixed up a dark red with a little bit of, I used a little bit of black and a little bit of red, and then I started by just really lightly tracing out the shapes where I really wanted them. So you have the nose, you have the lips, and then the really weird cheek areas. So I basically trace them out and then lightly paint them in and then go darker as I go. Now if you wanted to be really accurate, towards the edges of all of his makeup it gets darker. So if you wanted to use a lighter red and then actually go back and outline and kind of feather a darker color around, that would look so much more accurate. But once again, this was just something for the Halloween decorations that we're going to have on the deck, so I wasn't too worried about it. The lips, I did the exact same thing. I used kind of like a wide brush and just used and stippled out the shape of the lips. Now Pennywise has some really weird lips. I didn't get them 100% right here, but you know what, I was happy with it. Once again, like I was kind of trying to create the look of Pennywise. I didn't need him to look exactly like Pennywise. So I'm just tracing it out and then going over the bottom lip, because he has a really big bottom lip, which this the sculpt on this guy luckily has. You can then go back in and fix your shape by using more paint, or you can even take some away by using white to cover up some of that red. Just wait for it to dry 100%. Now to do his weird stripes that he has going on, I started by drawing them out with a pencil to make sure I could get both sides like symmetrical. The issue with this animatronic is that his face is so widely grinned and kind of he's so sullen because he's supposed to look like skeletal kind of. It's hard to really figure out where that curve is supposed to go, so I did the best I could and tried to connect it to the lip. I then used a thinner brush and started by lightly kind of painting in the shape, and I figured out that I was just gonna kind of fix the shape after painting it basically. So it's a little rough here, but you want to go in with like smaller brushes as you go to make it look a lot cleaner and a lot nicer. after that, you can see I'm connecting the lip, trying to create that kind of curve, and like you can see, it goes really, it's a really big angle underneath his chin because he has such a defined cheekbones that it is a little bit difficult. I then took a little bit of black paint on a brush and began to dry brush. So basically I dipped it in the black paint and then wiped out most of it on a paper towel and tried to dry brush some like eyeshadow that he has. I ended up going really light, and then towards the end of this tutorial I decided to color them in a lot darker after looking at a lot of photos. And then Pennywise has these really weird kind of eyebrow. He doesn't really have eyebrows, but he has these weird indented lines where his eyebrows are supposed to be. And this mask, or this sculpt, kind of had it, so I decided to just use the lines that were already there. They don't look 100% right, but it worked out. So Pennywise also has these weird kind of cracks and wrinkles all over his forehead if you look at the high-res photos. So I also dry brushed some black over the top of his head, and the head was already kind of bumpy just because of that matte paint that we used. It created a really textured look after blotting it, all that paint on. So all I had to do was lightly dry brush it, and it kind of stayed on the high areas and created that look that I really ended up liking. To be more accurate, you could go back over doing the same thing with a little bit of brown just to create kind of more contrast, but I was happy with how the black paint did. After that, that was pretty much the finished look. Like I said, I did go back and do the eyes because the eyes look kind of crazy at this point. Now, Pennywise, or this animatronic is super, super thin, so I didn't really cut, but I kind of pulled the back slit open a little bit more and then began to try and remove the costume temporarily so that we could add some bulk onto the wire arms and the wire body. The arms and both the neck cuff are super glued on, so if you just lightly kind of pull it, it'll come right off, and we're going to just hot glue those back on later. As you can see, it's just a little arm piece attached to a piece of wire with a little bit of foam insulation tubing over it. Obviously, it's far too thin to be, look like an actual arm. Even if that was skeleton, that's too thin, so we're going to add a little bit of bulk to it. So there's his really scary costumeless body. To add some bulk, there are a lot of ways to do it, but I'm just using these really heavy-duty trash bags that we have hundreds of in the garage when we did a renovation at our house. Basically, I kind of fluffed it out and then began to roll it around the arm. And then what I was going to do is just using some duct tape, create some definition along the arm as I go, like making the wrist, obviously the thinnest, and then making it bulk out towards the arms. And I kept it really bulky towards the arms to try and create a little bit of like a body. I don't know, like it's half of it is his body, I guess, trying to create that bulky shoulder. I then decided to kind of drape another one over like a kind of like an apron if I could get it to stay. I duct taped that around and then tried to just keep it a little bit baggy so that when I put the costume back over the entire thing, he'd have a little bit more bulk to him and look like he actually had a body. So here's the top half back on. You can see he looks a lot better. He looks a lot more lifelike, I guess. He is still short, and I could raise him if I wanted to, but once again, it's just a prop for our deck. I then rolled up one full trash bag and trying to create a leg shape. So I was dumb, and I tried to pull a little bit of a slit in the leg and then slide the entire thing in, which worked, but after trying to get the other leg in, the entire pants were just kind of hot glued to this mesh that was holding it up, so the entire pants came off anyways. So I recommend just removing the entire pair of pants and then stuffing the trash bag or whatever you're using inside of it and then just gluing it back on like we will later, because I made it so much more difficult for myself. So as you can see, his legs look like, I don't know, kind of nice now. They don't look like ridiculously thin. And so Pennywise's costume isn't going to be 100% accurate. I'm using with what I have in this. To be more accurate, you could add more fabric to kind of create the skirt-like look, and you could change his neck collar, but I'm deciding to just reuse what I had. I hot glued all that in, and I also tried to create some artificial ruffles by hot gluing some areas and pouching areas up, like looking at set photos to try and create it. His costume looks a lot like Twisty the Clown from American Horror Story, but it worked out for what I was doing. I then hot glued the pants back into the inside. Now to do the hair, it's a little bit complicated and a little messy, but it's actually really easy once you figure it out. I started by tracing out the area that I wanted the hair to be and then used some spray glue. I cut up a cheap wig and began to just glue sections down. Now, I tried painting the wig red prior to gluing it, but I would recommend just painting it after because it made some hairs stiff and then some of the hairs didn't get painted. And so it kind of looked crazy, and some areas were easier to spray glue down than others. Continue adding spray glue on top of layers. Really, you should start from the back up. I just wanted to see if it would even stick to this head, so I started with the front and then began to add onto the back. And this really didn't have to be that clean. You really just want to kind of build up a hairline kind of area. So here's a really messy portion. I began to add then the front areas, trying to make it look a little cleaner by pushing it down and creating a defined hairline. After that, I decided to start shaping it, and you could use hairspray, but I actually used spray glue and then would kind of just grip it, trying to make those cones his hair kind of has. After that, that was kind of the style. I ended up spray painting some yellow and then a little bit of red on top because I didn't have any orange spray paint, but I really like the color contrast that I got throughout his hair. To make the backdrop, we found these like weird back circus things, and then we got that sign from Spirit Halloween and just 3M mounting taped it down. And we put him right in front of it on our deck, and our Pennywise was finished. I really do hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you've never been to my channel, like I said before, be sure to check out, I have a whole bunch of Jason mask tutorials, Michael Myers masks. That's kind of what this channel has really become over this point. And a video about making Captain America shield with like 3 million views. Harry Potter one with 5 million views. This channel really doesn't have a lot of like continuity to it, but I mean, I try to produce kind of interesting content depending on when the things are coming out, blah blah blah. Yeah, please do subscribe, like this video if you can, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.